Welcome to the monthly Cloud Leadership Circle meetup.
Continuing on some of the aspects that Abhishek touched upon on Zero Trust side, I'm going to talk about it again. My understanding was it's a 10-minute presentation, so I presented more on the lighter note, how to get started, but there's so much to be said about what to do about it in an enterprise, how to devise a strategy, figure out implementation plan, deploy, implement, monitor, execute, and then actually get value out of it, right? And it's a constant process. So I'll talk more about it, but this will be hopefully a little bit lighter presentation. Who am I? Why am I talking about it? So I've been in security industry for 20 plus years, including a lot of the research work I've done. I have been building security programs for Fortune 500 as well as early stage startups for a while now. I advise a lot of startups across the globe and a lot of VCs on security strategy, due diligence, go to market, product market fit, things of that nature. I have a PhD in computer science and I'm ISACA CISM certified. And with that territory comes a lot of patents, other certifications, and publications. I'm a huge proponent of democratizing cybersecurity. I strongly believe it is way too complex, way too expensive, and confusion doesn't help anybody, right? So that means everybody is a little bit less secure if they don't know what actually needs to be done. There are gaps and weaknesses all around us. And I love to help people understand cybersecurity. That is my passion. I have young kids and I start talking to them about password and security and they look at me as if I'm from a different planet, but I love telling everybody about it because I think more people know, more awareness is there, better we all will be. Coming on to zero trust architecture, it's a never trust, always verify architecture. That means you don't get permission once and you can do whatever you want. You will always be authenticated. You'll always be tested on who you are. That's a big paradigm shift from cybersecurity. Going back 20 years, 30 years, you log into a system, you have access to all the resources. You can do whatever you want to do with it, and then you can log out. No more with zero trust architecture. It does not assume any automatic trust, like I mentioned, right? Even within the network perimeter, you're into one resource, you want to access different resource, you are staying too long. You can define policies to be as restrictive as you want based on what your business needs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it in a couple of slides later. So how does it differ from traditional security models? I just thought of throwing this as a comparison. So traditional security models are perimeter based. You got in to a building, you got into a system, you got into a cloud environment, and you have access to whatever your role allows. Zero trust is more identity based. Who you are, what you can do depends on what you provide as an authentication mechanism, as well as what you are authorized to access, whether it's a database resource, an application, infrastructure, anything. Traditional models use trust inside, verify outside. So you are verified at the gate when you get in, but once you're inside, you are trusted to do whatever you're supposed to do or whatever you want to do. And zero trust is you verify everything always, no matter where you are, no matter which environment you are, no matter which resource you're accessing. Obviously, traditional models were static. You define certain rules, you define certain parameters, you go around that. Zero trust models are more dynamic and you have continuous authentication and you keep evolving based on your business needs. Traditional models have privilege-centric security. You have these privileges and you go and do whatever. Zero trust is more resource-centric. So it could be data, application, network. You based on what resource you are trying to access, your security parameters and policies are around that. So what are the components of zero trust cloud security? How do we go about understanding it, right? So the first thing is always understand the business needs, right? Not every business will require all kind of bells and whistles and tools and controls, right? So define your policies. Do you need a strong password? You want to go passwordless? You have certain multi-factor authentication that you need to put in place, right? Always want to do that, ideally. Um, do you have highly sensitive data in certain environments? Do you have um, different kind of organizations needing access to different resources? What if somebody gets into your environment? Do you have micro-segmentation strategy in place? So if you get breached, somebody does get in, they should not be able to do much damage. Your attack surface is reduced to that segment that you created in network. One of the most important thing I think is to improve any kind of zero trust architecture or security maturity in any organization. You have to have the continuous monitoring and analytics, knowing what you build on the left of the boom and understanding what is coming on the right when those resources are used by those identities that you define is extremely important. So many times I have seen companies defining a lot of stuff from their KPI, KRIs, their policies, more on the provisioning of those, right? So I provision you to have access to certain database to delete or um, do operations, but I'm not monitoring whether you're actually using those privileges or not. If you're not, then you have more than what you need, and that should either be restricted, taken away, or at least reviewed periodically. So extremely, extremely important to have that. And I know Abhishek talked a lot about the SIM solutioning, the SOC, the monitoring, incident, L1, L2, L3. That's really the holy grail of security right now. Implementing zero trust in cloud environments. So you definitely have to identify sensitive data, critical assets that you have. If you're a healthcare provider, you have to look into the PII data, the PHI data that you have. If you are a fintech, you will be doing a PCI, PII data, right? In general, if you are interacting with any third party, you do need to assess your risk in any data coming into your environment or leaving your environment to that third party. So extremely, extremely important to have an inventory of that, understanding that. Map the flow of sensitive data. You identify the data, you identify the assets, you identified your partners in terms of third parties, fourth parties. Now you need to map the flow of data. Where is it going? Is the sensitive data going into a zone which is not supposed to be sensitive? So is your production data going into a QA environment without you knowing? That can create a lot of risk. And because QA environment, more people will have access to it, manipulate it, use it, or abuse it, or exfiltrate it. Implement strong identity management. So it's not enough to just say that these are my RBAC controls, these are the people, this is the org, so everybody should have access to this data. You have to really know who's responsible to do what job and what level of access they need to a certain resource, or they may not need any access to sensitive data, for example, and that's okay. You need to keep reviewing it. Ideally, I would say quarterly to twice a year is a good strategy. You can do yearly depending on the business risk you have. Architecting zero trust network, your micro-segmentation policies, your network access from outside, from those third parties, from your customer side, from your employee side, extremely, extremely important to know that, and then of course being able to measure and understand on the right side. Create zero trust policy. I talked about it in the previous slide. Just know what are you trying to achieve from business perspective? What are business risks? How do you translate them into policies that really make that business risk into a policy framework that you can manage, map, and identify gaps, right? The less gaps you have between your policy and what you see in your architecture and what your business risks are, the better it is for you. Monitor and maintain. I'll keep saying it because that is really the holy grail of security. Did I go back? Okay. Benefits. So again, each of these components could be a deck of itself in 1 to 2 hours, could be workshop to understand what to do, how to go about it, what tools to use, what you should be doing on your own versus trying to leverage somebody else if you don't have an expertise. Not everything can be done by organization, no matter what budget they have. So you have to rely on some third parties potentially. And then you have to make sure they are the right partners for you. You have to rely on tooling that is just very hard to implement for low cost in your environment. You have to purchase them. But knowing where they fit in your zero trust architecture, in your business, how much disruptions they will cause, how easy it is to deploy them, and then manage and maintain them, and how they impact your overall friction in your environment in terms of zero trust. Extremely important to leverage those. Like I said, each of them could be a workshop in itself to just go through details and devise the strategy. So what are the benefits of zero trust architecture, right? So far, we talked about enhanced security. So you don't give access to anybody anytime, wherever they want, right? You keep authenticating, you keep validating they're the right people, they need access, they have access. Improved visibility. Now, since you have so many checkpoints, you know who's accessing what at any point. If you have correct correlation rules, if you have the business risk identified in terms of the correlation policies, extremely useful to be able to detect and prevent certain attacks, especially attempts where the attacks are slow and stealthy, or a ransomware which really proliferates within your environment with privilege escalation. Very, very important. Zero trust is probably one of the best defense we have from ransomware perspective in my mind. Increased compliance. Since you have so many controls in place, you are able to create the evidence in terms of your logs, in terms of your policies and compliance to those policies. You may have HIPAA, PCI, and all. Super easy to create those evidences that your auditors will be looking at or regulatory officers will be looking at. So very, very helpful. Enhanced agility. Since you are constantly improving, constantly adding, business may need another environment that needs to be done. You can use some of this template, massage it, update your policies, implement it, and keep doing that. So very easy to do that instead of the traditional models where you have to merge an entire environment and try to figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't work, do we need to change the tools? This is kind of tool agnostic if you think about it, because a lot of the policies and architecture and the basic sanity checks you can do could be pretty tool agnostic there. Any questions so far? I just wanted to know if I went too fast. Oh, I did an amazing job. Okay. So in summary, zero trust is essential for modern cloud security. I have managed multiple cloud environments, and I can tell you it's not easy. It's a process that requires a different kind of thinking. It's a process where a stakeholder engagement and your top level management approval is extremely crucial. You want them to sponsor it, right? You cannot go and change it engineer by engineer, one device after device. It has to be a strategy at a higher level. Like I said, it's a continuous process, not a one-time implementation. It balances security with usability and performance. Of course, there is going to be always some friction, but it helps you in terms of being able to manage your security very well, have evidences collected, and potentially stopping some of the breaches that could happen in a larger environment, especially. You can adapt and evolve as threats and technology change. Like I said, you can tighten your policy. You can say, okay, these are the threats I have on my external network surface. You can start doing more due diligence there. You can add more controls. You can add more authentication mechanisms there. So you have the dial in your hand to kind of tighten in terms of policy. Every time you harden it, remember, it also creates friction from user experience perspective. So you just have to be very careful with that. And I have some references. NIST has a zero trust architecture framework. There are articles on Gartner, Forrester, IDC. The list goes on, but I think NIST is probably my favorite to start with. Good enough information available. There's, I think, a 100-page document they have, if I'm not mistaken. Really good to go through and understand more on that. A lot of the techniques that you use for cloud are applicable on-prem as well. Cloud just makes it easier with their APIs to manage a lot of things, integrates very easy, and asset management is a breeze in cloud compared to if you have very discrete kind of hybrid environment or on-prem. I've seen it's just impossible to get asset inventory correct. Cloud makes it much easier, especially if you're on a single cloud. Multi-cloud, some massage is needed, but you can still make it work. And with that, yeah, thank you. I have my QR code for LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. Happy to chat more and happy to answer any questions.